They say love fades when money enters the room. I used to believe I could live without love, until I tried. The string quartet played softly beneath the golden lights of the Manhattan skyline. It was a wedding people would envy, crystal chandeliers suspended from an open rooftop, a skyline kissed by twilight, and every guest dressed like wealth itself. I should have felt lucky. I should have felt something. But as I adjusted the lace on my gown, staring at my reflection in the mirror, the woman looking back felt like a stranger, painted, polished, perfect, and hollow. Sophie, my maid of honor, burst through the door with her usual energy. Emma, you're glowing. Richard's downstairs, waiting by the altar. The man looks like a movie star. I smiled, that polite, practiced kind of smile. Inside, my stomach was tight. Richard Langston wasn't a movie star. He was 45, confident, composed, and twice the age of the man I used to love. But he was also the kind of man my mother said every woman dreams of. Powerful, reliable, rich. And maybe once, I believed her. The music swelled. The doors opened. Every step I took toward Richard felt heavier than the last. And then, just for a second, the sound of laughter sliced through the music. That laugh. That same warm, reckless laugh that used to make my heart race. I froze. It couldn't be. He'd left 3 years ago, chasing dreams I was too afraid to follow. But as the violins carried on, I forced myself forward. Nod, breathe. I do, I whispered. And just like that, Emma Clark, the girl who once believed in forever, became Mrs. Langston, the woman who believed in survival. I told myself love was a luxury. I didn't realize I'd just sold my soul. That night, the party blurred. Laughter, champagne, applause, all noise. Richard kissed my cheek as photographers circled us. But behind the flash, my eyes searched the shadows, and that's when I saw him. At the edge of the rooftop, dark suit, loosened tie, faint smirk. Ethan. He'd come back. The morning sun spilled over the sleepy town of Willow Creek, its rays warming the old gas station that stood at the edge of town. Mark adjusted his oil-stained cap, wiping sweat from his brow as he worked beneath a rusted truck. It was the same routine every day, the same smell of gasoline, the same creak of the metal roof, the same silence that followed her absence. It had been 3 years since Emma left, 3 years since she'd chosen luxury over love. But in Mark's world, every sunrise still began with her name. He'd see her face in the reflections of car windows, he'd hear her laughter in the soft hum of the radio, and every time he looked at the road leading out of town, he remembered the day she drove away, her eyes glistening, her hand trembling on the gear shift, her words breaking the air. I'm sorry, Mark. I can't live on dreams anymore. She never looked back. Yet Mark never hated her. He simply learned to live with the hole she left behind, a space he filled with silence and old country songs. He'd rebuilt his father's workshop, started fixing cars for half the town, and raised money for his younger sister's college. Everyone in Willow Creek called him the quiet mechanic. But behind that calm, there lived a man whose heart still waited, not for her return, but for the day he could finally forget. One evening, the sun was bleeding gold across the sky when he received a call. Mark, it's Sheriff Davis, said a gruff voice. We've got a car broken down just off the old highway. Woman stranded. Looks like she's from the city, fancy car, doesn't know the first thing about engines. Can you head out? Mark grabbed his tools, his heart steady, until he saw the car. A silver Mercedes. He froze. His breath caught in his throat. And then she stepped out. Her blonde hair, once wild and free, now perfectly styled. A diamond on her hand. Her clothes screamed wealth. But her eyes were haunted. Emma? He whispered. She turned slowly, and for the first time in 3 years, their eyes met. There was silence, heavy as thunder. The world seemed to pause. Mark, she breathed, her voice cracking, you still fix cars? He forced a tight smile. Yeah, still fix what's broken. She blinked, tears welling. I didn't know you still lived here. I don't have much reason to leave, he said quietly, then crouched beside her car. Pop the hood. Emma hesitated, her hands trembling. He worked in silence, the air between them thick with things unsaid. The smell of oil and perfume mixed, strange, bittersweet. She wanted to speak, to apologize, but her pride kept her silent. When he finally closed the hood, he wiped his hands on a rag and looked at her. You're good to go. She nodded, searching his face for warmth, but all she found was calm indifference, the kind that hurt more than anger. Mark, she whispered, I never meant. Don't, he cut in softly. You made your choice, Emma. I hope it gave you everything you wanted. The words hung in the air. She swallowed hard, fighting tears. It did, she said, lying through her smile. Everything I wanted. He gave a short nod and turned away, the sound of gravel crunching beneath his boots. She stood by her car, watching him walk back toward his old truck, feeling a pain she hadn't felt in years, regret. As she drove away, the wind carried her whisper back to him. "I'm sorry." He didn't turn around. But when she vanished into the distance, he looked down at the rag in his hands and smiled faintly. "Me too," he murmured. Emma leaned against the marble balcony of her penthouse, the glittering skyline of Chicago stretching endlessly before her. Below, the city pulsed with life, lights, cars, and noise. It should have made her feel powerful, successful, fulfilled. But instead, it only made her feel small. Inside, the house looked like something from a dream. Chandeliers, silk curtains, and a grand piano she never played. Every inch screamed perfection. But every corner was silent. She turned when she heard footsteps behind her. "Emma," a deep voice called. It was Richard Hale, her husband, the wealthy businessman who had promised her a life of luxury. He was tall, commanding, dressed in an immaculate black suit. His phone was glued to his hand, even during dinner. "You're hosting the foundation gala tomorrow," he said flatly. "Wear the blue dress. The sponsors like it when you look elegant." Emma forced a smile. Of course. He didn't notice her trembling hands. He didn't see the sadness behind her practiced smile. He only saw the trophy he'd bought. After he left, she stared at the glass of wine on the table. The reflection that looked back at her wasn't the same girl who once dreamed under starlit skies with Mark. It was someone else, polished, beautiful, but empty. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Does your heart ever stop hurting when the lights go out?" She froze. No name, no number she recognized. But the words hit her like a blade, because they sounded just like something Mark would say. Her heart raced as she typed back, then deleted it. She took a shaky breath and whispered to herself. "Don't be foolish, Emma. You made your choice." That night, she walked into her dressing room. Designer gowns hung like colorful ghosts. She touched one, a blue silk dress, and remembered Mark's hands, rough and warm, holding her close the night before she left. "You don't need the world," he told her softly. "You just need someone who sees you." Tears blurred her vision. She sank to the floor, clutching the dress. "I had that," she whispered to the silence, "and I threw it away." The next morning, at the gala, flashbulbs blinded her. Reporters swarmed, praising her beauty, her grace, her perfect life. She smiled for the cameras, the same empty smile she'd practiced 100 times. But as Richard wrapped his arm around her waist and whispered, "Remember to laugh when they compliment us," she realized something chilling. She wasn't his wife. She was his brand. And for the first time since she left Willow Creek, she wished she could go back, to oil-stained hands, cracked truck doors, and a man who didn't care about money. Only her heart. Emma didn't know why she texted him. Maybe loneliness, maybe guilt, maybe the need to feel real again. Days passed with no reply, until one evening, as the city lights shimmered outside her penthouse window, her phone buzzed. "Emma, I didn't think you'd ever reach out." Her breath caught. It was him, Mark. She sank onto the couch, her hands trembling. "I shouldn't have," she replied. "Then why did you?" He sent back. She hesitated. "Because I can't stop thinking about what I lost." A long pause. Then, "You didn't lose it, Emma. You traded it." That single sentence cut deeper than any insult. She shut her eyes, memories flooding back, the nights they spent laughing in their tiny apartment, the plans they made under broken ceiling fans, the way he used to hold her like she was his whole world. "You were my reason," he wrote again, "until you chose his world over ours." Her throat tightened. "I thought I was doing the right thing," she typed back. "Then why do you sound like you're still trying to convince yourself?" Silence, only the sound of her heart pounding against the emptiness around her. Then, without thinking, she typed, "Can we meet?" For a few seconds, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then her phone buzzed again. "Tomorrow, 8 p.m., the pier." She stared at the message for a long time, her mind screaming no, but her heart whispering go. That night, she stood at the window, watching the city glow beneath her. In the reflection, she could almost see the younger version of herself, the girl who once believed love could conquer anything, the girl who never thought she'd be standing here, rich but empty, loved but alone. She whispered into the glass. "I'm sorry." The ocean wind carried the salt of old memories. The pier stretched out under a bruised sky, the water below whispering secrets no one wanted to hear. Emma stood there, a long beige coat hugging her frame, her blonde hair tossed by the sea breeze, her heart in chaos. Every passing minute made her doubt more. And then, she saw him. Mark, older now, but unmistakable. The same steady eyes, the same quiet strength, only colder, distant, heavier. He stopped a few steps away, hands in his pockets. Neither spoke. The sound of crashing waves filled the space between them. "You look the same," she said softly. "You don't," he replied. There was no malice, just truth. Emma lowered her gaze. "I didn't come here to fight." "Then why did you come?" She struggled to find words. "Because I can't sleep without thinking about what I did. About you." Mark gave a bitter laugh. "That's the thing about guilt. It keeps you awake." Tears burned her eyes. "I thought you'd understand." "Understand what?" He shot back. "That you traded love for a penthouse? For security? I walked miles for you, Emma. I worked 2 jobs to keep that apartment. And you?" He stopped, shaking his head. "You were gone before I even knew you'd left." She took a step closer. "I was scared, Mark. You have no idea what it's like to be drowning in love and still be terrified of sinking poor." He stared at her for a long time, then sighed. "I loved you enough to let you go once. Don't make me do it again." Her voice broke. "Is there nothing left?" He turned toward the ocean, the light reflecting in his eyes. "There's always something left," he murmured. "But that doesn't mean it's enough." The wind howled. Her tears mixed with the cold sea spray. Then, slowly, Mark reached into his pocket and pulled out a tiny seashell necklace, the one she'd given him years ago. He placed it gently in her hand. "You said it would keep me safe." "It did," she whispered. They stood there, both trembling, both wishing the years could be rewritten. Finally, he stepped back. "Goodbye, Emma." Her lips trembled. "Goodbye, Mark." He walked away, his figure swallowed by the fog, while she clutched the necklace to her chest, sobbing silently as the waves broke beneath her feet. The next morning, the world looked exactly the same, yet nothing felt the same to Emma. The sun streamed through the tall glass windows of her penthouse apartment, casting golden streaks over the marble floors, but the warmth did nothing to touch the coldness in her chest. The echo of Mark's voice still lingered in her mind, soft, final, devastating. She moved mechanically through her morning routine, coffee, emails, deadlines. Her reflection in the mirror looked flawless, silk robe, diamond earrings, perfect hair. But beneath the surface, she was a ruin disguised as luxury. The headlines on her phone flashed with the hollow triumphs she once craved. "Tyler and Emma Grant attend gala. Socialite couple expands empire." She stared at her smiling face in the photos, posed beside her husband, Tyler, the billionaire she had chosen over Mark, and felt nothing but exhaustion. Tyler walked in moments later, his voice brisk, impatient. "You didn't come to bed last night. You were out again, weren't you?" She didn't answer immediately. "I needed some air." "Air," he scoffed. "That's what you call disappearing for hours?" His tone was sharp, but there was something else beneath it, indifference. The kind that comes from a love that was never real to begin with. Emma turned away, her hand trembling slightly as she set down her coffee cup. "You don't have to pretend to care, Tyler. You've made it clear for years." He smirked. "You think I don't care? You're my wife, Emma. You make me look good." The words cut deeper than she expected. "You make me look good." That was all she was to him, a trophy polished for public view. "Is that all I am to you?" she whispered. "It's what you wanted, isn't it?" He said flatly. "Money, status, comfort. Don't act like the victim now." The silence stretched between them, heavy and bitter. He straightened his tie and grabbed his keys. "Try not to embarrass yourself today. We have dinner with investors tonight." When the door slammed, the sound echoed through the empty apartment. Emma sank into the couch, her hands shaking. She thought she'd feel angry. She didn't, just empty. She stared at her engagement ring, the one that once symbolized everything she thought she wanted, and slowly slid it off her finger. The imprint it left on her skin felt like a scar. Her phone buzzed, a single message lighting up the screen. From unknown. "Sometimes, the right choice comes too late." Her heart stopped. No name, no number. But she knew. It was him, Mark. She clutched the phone to her chest, tears spilling down again. Every wall she had built began to crumble. The penthouse felt too large, too quiet, too far from anything real. For the first time, Emma admitted the truth to herself. She didn't lose Mark because of fate. She lost him because she chose wrong. Emma didn't sleep that night. The city outside her window sparkled like a field of diamonds, mocking her. Every light in the skyline represented something she thought she wanted. Power, prestige, comfort, yet none of it could quiet the voice in her head repeating Mark's words. Sometimes, the right choice comes too late. By morning, the cracks she'd tried to hide began to show. At the office, she moved like a ghost through glass corridors filled with whispers. Her colleagues noticed, her silence, her distracted gaze, the faint redness around her eyes. She'd built a reputation as the woman who had everything under control, but now she could barely hold a pen steady. Tyler called her twice that morning. She ignored both. He called again at noon. This time she picked up. "You're trending," he said flatly. "What?" "Someone leaked the photos. You and him. Your little charity event reunion." Emma froze. "What are you talking about?" "You and that Mark guy. You were seen leaving together last night." His voice turned sharp. "Do you realize what this does to my name? My business?" She tried to explain, but he didn't let her. "You'll fix this," Tyler snapped. "You'll post something. Say it was charity related. Say whatever you have to, just make it go away." The call ended before she could respond. Her throat burned. The office lights felt too bright. Every screen around her seemed to flash with the same betrayal. Her face, Mark's face, headlines screaming lies. She ran out of the building before the tears could fall. Out on the street, the air was sharp and cold. Cameras followed her, not the flashing kind, but the invisible ones of gossip, judgment, and silent ridicule. She ducked into a quiet cafe, trembling as she ordered nothing. She sat near the window, hands gripping her coffee cup though it was empty, and there, in that reflection, she saw what she had become, a woman trapped between two worlds, one built on gold, the other on regret. Across the street, she saw a familiar figure, Mark. He was helping an old woman cross the road, his movements gentle, patient. The same man who once loved her without conditions. The same man she'd traded for comfort. Her heart clenched. She wanted to run to him, to explain everything. But what could she say? That she was sorry? That she finally understood? He glanced up, just once. Their eyes met through the window glass, and in that second, everything she'd been running from caught up to her. The lies, the choices, the emptiness. He didn't come in. He just gave her a small, sad smile before turning away. Emma's tears finally broke free. She pressed her forehead against the cool glass and whispered, "I was too late." The city didn't stop for her. It never does. But inside that cafe, time slowed. She wasn't the woman from the magazines anymore. She wasn't Tyler's trophy wife. She was just Emma, broken, human, and painfully aware of the cost of her own decisions. Days blurred into one another like smudged ink on paper. Emma stopped showing up to the office. She didn't answer calls. Even her reflection felt like a stranger now. One who wore her face but none of her fire. The media storm didn't fade. It grew. Every gossip column, every news blog, every whisper in the city seemed to orbit around her downfall. The billionaire's wife caught sneaking around. The charity queen's secret affair. None of it was true. Not in the way they said it, but in the court of public opinion, truth had long since lost its meaning. Her manager tried calling, her assistant dropped off resignation letters, and her lawyer sent polite reminders about public image rehabilitation. But Emma didn't move. She sat in her penthouse, surrounded by glass, silence, and regret. At night, she would scroll through old photos, her and Mark in simpler days, his smile unguarded, her laugh real. She remembered the way his hands always found hers first, even in crowded rooms. Back then, love had been messy, raw, but real. Now, it was nothing more than echoes trapped in her mind. One evening, she went out for a drive. No destination, no makeup, no disguise. Rain poured like judgment from the heavens, blurring the city lights into streaks of color. She parked by the old bookstore where she and Mark once spent hours, hidden from the world. It was closed now, boarded up, dust clinging to the window like memory refusing to die. She pressed her hand against the glass. "I traded everything," she whispered, voice breaking. "And for what?" Behind her, a car pulled up. Tyler stepped out, his suit perfectly pressed even in the rain. His expression was a mix of fury and pity. "Tyler, you disappeared, Emma. Do you know what that does to me, to my image?" She didn't respond. "Tyler, you think you can hide after humiliating me in front of the press?" "Emma, I didn't leak anything, you know that." "Tyler, it doesn't matter what's true. What matters is what they believe." He stepped closer, voice low and cold. "You made me look weak." Something in her snapped. "Emma, weak? You were never strong. You bought me like an accessory, and I let you because I was too afraid to be poor." For a moment, silence hung heavy between them, the kind that breaks worlds. Tyler's jaw tightened. He turned, walked back to his car, and said without looking at her, "You'll regret this." And then he drove off, tires hissing through the puddles. Emma stood alone in the rain, her hair drenched, mascara gone, but for the first time, free. The water washed away the layers of lies she had built around herself. She looked back at the bookstore one last time and whispered to the night, "I already do." 3 months later, the city had begun to forget her. New scandals replaced her name on the trending pages, and new billionaires filled the headlines. But for Emma, Time hadn't healed anything, it had only made her quieter, sharper, more aware. She'd sold the penthouse, moved into a modest apartment above a flower shop. She worked mornings arranging bouquets for strangers in love, a cruel irony, but one she embraced. Each rose she wrapped felt like penance. Each smiling couple that left the shop reminded her of what she'd thrown away. Love doesn't always wait, but it remembers. Subscribe for more stories that remind you why the heart always wins. One afternoon, as sunlight streamed through the window, she heard the shop bell ring. She turned and froze. Mark stood there. No expensive suit, no bodyguards, just him. Worn jeans, a soft shirt, and the same gentle eyes that once looked at her like she was the only person in the world. Her breath caught in her throat. "Emma, Mark." He smiled faintly, not bitter, just sad. "Mark, hey, I heard you were here." There was a silence between them, filled with everything they never said. The air smelled of roses and unfinished stories. "Emma, you shouldn't have come." "Mark, maybe not, but I wanted to see you. I needed to." He looked around at the flowers. "Mark, you always loved lilies." She nodded slowly. "Still do." He picked one up, carefully, like it was something fragile. "So what happened to the woman who said she'd never trade love for money?" Emma's eyes filled. "She did, and she lost both." Mark took a step closer, his voice low. "I never hated you, Emma. I was hurt, but I never stopped hoping you'd find your way back, not to me, just to yourself." A tear slid down her cheek. "Emma, you always saw more in me than I deserved." He smiled sadly. "Maybe. Or maybe you just forgot what you were worth." For a long moment, neither spoke. Just silence, gentle, forgiving silence. Then Mark placed the lily on the counter and turned toward the door. "Emma, Mark, wait." He paused. "Emma, thank you for loving me, even when I didn't know how to love you back." He turned, his eyes soft but resolute. "Goodbye, Emma." The door closed behind him. The bell chimed, one final sound that lingered like a heartbeat fading into memory. Emma stood still, her hand clutching the lily he'd left behind. Outside, sunlight broke through the clouds. She smiled, faintly, painfully, but for the first time, it was real. Sometimes, love doesn't give us second chances, but it gives us lessons. I lost everything chasing a life that wasn't mine. But today, I found peace in knowing I finally became someone I could love. The screen slowly fades to white with soft piano music swelling underneath.